If you could go back to the first day of your first term and the first day of your second term, what advice would you give yourself?
I think I would have closed Guantanamo on the first day. It's not who we are as a country. It is used by terrorists around the world to help recruit jihadists. So instead, we've had to just chip away at it year after year after year. But I think in that first couple of weeks, we could have done it quickly.
That's at a town hall in Cleveland yesterday. That's got a lot of people talking. Saying it should have been, Gitmo should have been the first thing he did when he got in the Oval Office in January of 2009, more than 6 years ago. Pete Hegseth, CEO of Concerned Veterans for America, Fox News contributor. Pete, good morning to you. Could he have done that?
I really think he could have. The commander-in-chief has supreme authority over what he does with detainees, in this instance, unlawful enemy combatants. If he had wanted to, he could have likely, through executive order, he would have had to use a lot of political capital. He claims there was bipartisan consensus because he wanted to close it too.
That's not what he said there.
He could have spent it.
He said politics got tough, people got scared. What you're saying, they had the authority to do it. Why didn't he?
He didn't because, revisionist, it's very interesting here. He was concerned about using executive powers. He was worried because Bush had used such an overreach in his mind with the war, with executive power, that he wanted to go through a task force, which he confirmed, and took over a year to give him recommendations. So he didn't want to look like he was imposing executive directives, which of course is what he's known for now. That's the irony, is that he didn't use the power that he now uses all the time initially to close Guantanamo Bay. Instead, he got into a process and eventually he wasn't able to do it.
If the truth is that he had the authority to do it, then why is he talking the way he was talking yesterday? Why is that?
It's very telling about his mindset, too. Here we are 7 years later, and the one thing he would change on day one is closing Guantanamo Bay. How about revisiting your Iraq policy? How about revisiting your Libya policy? How about revisiting the number of detainees we've released who have gone back to the battlefield? He's so obsessed with Guantanamo Bay, the left's narrative of that being the cause of why they hate us, that he still, 7 years later, goes back to that decision. They're obsessed with closing it and it being such a big part of the problem, but they also realize they missed their moment. There was a small moment when they could have used that political capital to try to move them to the states, because only Congress, through preventing funding or saying they can't, barring them from coming to the United States, would have been what prevented them. I think through a couple of months and some hand-wringing, they probably could have done it early in the administration.
Pete, you had 242 detainees in January of 2009, yes. 100 of whom were from the country of Yemen. And as Catherine Harris pointed out yesterday, we still have issues with Yemen today, and you can question how much support there really was for closing Gitmo in early 2009.
He says there was bipartisan consensus. It was extremely thin, and it wasn't real, because Republicans understood that these guys are going back to the battlefield. They understood the implications of the war that we're in. It also reveals, these comments reveal, that he still doesn't believe, how naive he still is about the nature of this enemy, how naive he is of what these guys want to do, what ISIS and others seek to do, how they seek to do it, and that he's still apologizing and stepping back and saying we should have closed it, is revealing about his mindset about believing we're in a war or not in a war. And at this point, there is no bipartisan consensus on Guantanamo.
George Bush wrote about this in his book. Right into the discussions, they talked about it. Dick Cheney talked to James Rose in that Playboy interview, that trying to figure out a way to shut it down. This is what Cheney said. It's still open today. It's still there for a reason. You've still got a couple hundred really bad guys, terrorists, who you need to have some place you can keep them. You don't want to bring them to the United States and give them the rights and prerogatives they would have as an American citizen in a legal proceeding. If anything, we've let too many of them go in terms of those who have returned to the battlefield. That whole matter of the legal proceeding is what the president has talked about for years now.
Amen. If we had brought if we'd closed Gitmo on day one and had brought those folks to the states, we would have given them additional constitutional protections, made it tied it up even more in a legal morass, and even more pulled ourselves away from a war footing and believing that this is a police action we could fight against criminals. That's the mindset the White House still has.
But you know what the commander-in-chief would say. He'd say, we bring them to our courts and they get convicted. They don't go walking away.
It's because
what would you say to that?
They shrunk away from the commission's process. If they had, and there were some Supreme Court findings that made it more complicated. But if you stand up with moral clarity and say these are unlawful enemy combatants who are waging a war against us, we will push them through a commission's process, find them guilty or not guilty, and deal with them accordingly, execute those who deserve execution, and stay committed to that process with clarity, you can get it done. They complicated it from day one, and since then we've been dithering on Guantanamo.
About 125, 130, I believe, is the number remaining today. Pete Hegseth, thank you, and good to see you in person here.
Great to be here.
All right.